Welcome back. Well, the weather looking good over the next couple of days. The weather looking toward the end of the week looking pretty bad. It looks like we're going to be impacted with, at the very least, tropical storm force winds, maybe hurricane force winds somewhere not only in Louisiana, but Acadiana in the mix as well. We're going to show you some preliminary data coming up in just a bit. First off, here's the big picture as we look at the water vapor imagery in the upper level pattern. We have Delta, the remnants of Gamma by the Yucatan, which is going to make for some interesting interactions. This is going to be just kind of drifting here next couple of days, and as Delta gets closer to it, may dumbbell around each other, and this may actually pull Delta farther to the west, so it's kind of a complicated forecast. Right now, this ridge of high pressure is pushing Delta to the west-northwest. Eventually, it's going to move a little bit northwestward as it gets close to Gamma. Then it could move more westward after that. Ultimately, there's a trough over here by South Texas. More upper-level energy for that trough comes in over here in Texas, and that will eventually make the storm turn to the north and then northeast near landfall. So a complicated scenario that we're watching very closely. Satellite imagery as we take a look at the storm looking pretty impressive for a Category 1 storm. Interestingly enough, we got this big glob of storms on the outflow boundary to the south really firing up, and sometimes you see these two areas merge. Might see that tonight, and sometimes this can actually weight the system to the south, so we'll see how this goes, but nonetheless, this has been an intensifying hurricane with a good central dense overcast. It may not be long before we start to see an eye developing on the satellite imagery. Upgraded to a hurricane at 7 o'clock now, 80-mile-an-hour wind, so that's a Category 1 hurricane. It's moving to the west-northwest at 7, and more importantly, pressure continues to drop significantly, so this is going to continue to intensify overnight tonight through tomorrow and could be on the verge of going into a rapid intensification cycle right now, which means this is going to probably become a Category 3 storm by tomorrow evening, and that's the forecast. 115-mile-an-hour winds, and may even happen sooner than that, and then 120-mile-an-hour winds clips the Yucatan. Maybe the Yucatan weakens this a little bit, but this is going to be going through the warmest part of the Gulf of Mexico. If we're farther east, it would be less so of an impact. We talked about that earlier, and then eventually heading up toward the Louisiana coastline, at least as a Category 2, and by this time it's going to be a mature hurricane, so it's going to have a bigger wind field perhaps than what we saw with Hurricane Laura, so we'll have to watch this very, very closely. Again, the forecast track nudged about 20 miles, 30 miles to the east at landfall, but not significant enough for us. We're still in, again, a big part of that cone of uncertainty. So here's the European model showing the storm moving to the west-northwest and then making a run for southwest Louisiana and Acadiana at this point, with a landfall maybe near Vermilion Parish. But that's the Euro run earlier today as we look at the latest GFS, and the GFS is gaining more and more credibility. A pretty potent hurricane out here in the Gulf of Mexico, south of Lafayette, going into Thursday afternoon. And again, this is highlighting the heavy rains that you're going to see with the tropical storm, or in this case a hurricane, and then making landfall somewhere near Acadiana or St. Mary Parish. So we could get a pretty good wallop with this system, and this is pretty close to the National Hurricane Center forecast track. So still too early to talk about impacts, but we could start looking at wind probabilities, and the probability of tropical storm force winds 39 to 57 that can knock power out. It's in the 50-50 range or better for a good part of Acadiana, so that's not a good opening volley. And then we look at damaging tropical storm force winds. That's going to be 58 to 73 miles an hour, a 20 to 30% chance of that, even a little bit higher down towards St. Mary Parish. And the risk of hurricane force winds, which by the way in Lafayette never got above 10% with Hurricane Laura, we're already set at 14%, and these numbers are going to go up a little bit. So certainly a wind situation, maybe a storm surge situation as well, but it's going to be dependent on where that storm makes landfall. But eastern Louisiana certainly under the gun for the possibility of a big storm surge as well. So here's the graph model. You can see the storm coming out here through the Gulf of Mexico and deepening. Our weather looking good with just fair to partly cloudy skies through Thursday. Maybe a shower, but eventually we're going to see more clouds and the chance of rain coming with that storm for sure. Tomorrow, nice day, upper 50s to start, mid 80s to finish, and then as we head into Wednesday, Thursday, I do expect maybe by this time tomorrow night could see a hurricane watch posted. If not, it'll be first thing Wednesday morning, and watching for potential impacts for Delta that'll be moving on through as we go through Friday. Looks to be the tough day, and then then hopefully improving for Saturday. After that quiet pattern, we hope, and we hope it stays that way.